I've been having a lot of fun making these little tiny hand-stitched treasure squares using this scrap of chocolate and cat themed upholstery fabric that I bought when I was at the Textile Museum in Toronto last summer. It was really perfect for the cards and letter theme that I have for my Ko-fi make-along this month. You're most welcome to join us. There is a small subscription fee, but everybody gets all of the tutorials and the make-along projects each month. And I had lots of the upholstery fabric left over, so I started making these treasure squares. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is a treasure square? Well, let me tell you, the folks over in the social stitching group at the Moberly Arts and Cultural Center have been making these tiny little hand-stitched squares to trade with each other. And they were inspired by some YouTube videos that they had seen, and they came up with their own version of that project. So each square measures 2.5 by 2.5 inches. And yes, that is me making a template because I don't have a mental model of what 2.5 inches looks like. And then each square has a sturdy backing fabric made out of something like a heavyweight wool suiting fabric, quilt batting, and for mine I'm just using some craft felt that I happen to have. And it always feels so satisfying to me to use up something that I've been hoarding for way too long. And then there's some sort of decorative fabric on the front. I've got this very perfectly cut out square, not by me, it's by someone else, and I'm going to pair it up with this little chocolatey paw print that I'm going to cut out much less perfectly, and that's quite all right. I don't think that's a big deal. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch all the way around to attach my backing fabric to the piece on the front, and I'll use this bright red embroidery floss. I'm told that these treasure squares for this particular group, in any case, they don't need to be finished around the edges because then the recipient can decide what they want to do themselves. And I'm also told, and this is kind of fun, that once you receive a treasure square from someone, you can embellish it or do whatever you like with it. So that's a kind of a fun idea. But I think it's a good idea to have these two pieces attached together so that they're not going to go anywhere, even if I do leave the edges raw. Now I've still got some thread left on my needle there, so I can use that to attach my paw print. And I found that this upholstery fabric frays a lot, so I'm going to use a blanket stitch to go all the way around the outside edge so that the threads stop unraveling. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to do my blanket stitch from right to left, which is a much more comfortable direction for me to do the stitch. But if you're right-handed, you'd likely be doing the stitch in the opposite direction. And now I want to stitch some XOXO hugs and kisses onto my square, and rounded corners are not easy to do, but I'm going to use this technique that's done in this type of embroidery called chicken scratch, where you thread your thread through some small stitches to get a rounded sort of shape. So I'm going to make some little tabs. I've still got some thread on my needle, one at the top, one at the bottom, and one on either side of where I want my O to go. And they don't have to be very big. They're not really part of the letter. They just will hold my threads in place. And now once I've got those little stitches in place, I'll switch over to some chocolatey brown embroidery thread. And I want my X's and O's to be very bold, so I'll use about 4 strands of this thread. And I'll come up on my fabric right by one of those tiny little stitches, and then I'll thread my brown thread through that little tiny securing stitch, not through the fabric, just through the stitch, and then I'll move to the next one. And this one's very tiny, so I'm having a bit of trouble getting it through. But again, I'll just go through the stitch, not through the fabric, and I'm not going to pull too tight. If I pull very tightly, it'll tend to square things off, but if I leave it loose, it'll look like the brown thread is going around in the circle, and I'll continue all the way around, going through all of those stitches, not skipping over one. And then I've got a very imperfect looking circle there. And if I want it to be bolder, I'll go around again. I can go around as many times as I want to make that letter or that shape as bold as I like it to be. And I think 2 trips around would be enough. And then once I've gone around twice, I'll go back to the back of my cloth, just close to where I came up in the beginning. And now I'm going to make some X's. Now X's, that's a fairly standard embroidery stitch called cross stitch. So that's what I'll do. I'll make one straight stitch at an angle, depending on where how you want your X to be set up, and I'll go over that again twice as well to make it bold. And then once I've gone over twice, I'll do the same thing. I'll cross over that first stitch in the opposite direction to make an X. And I could certainly do an X and then do another X on top. It doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to do the other X on the other side off the O in exactly the same way, going around twice. And here again, I could have doubled up my thread and just gone around once, but it doesn't really matter. It's really up to you. I don't know why I did it this way. I just did. Either way works. And there you go. That is my finished treasure square. I think that's pretty sweet. And here's my whole collection. I did these first 4 on this really lovely red velvet background with the light colors chocolate fabric. And then the second batch has a light background with the red chocolatey fabric. So tell me, which one do you like best? Are you a chocolate fan, a cat fan, perhaps both? And if you'd like to find out what I'm doing with the stitchy make-along that I'm doing with my Ko-fi supporters, I'd love to have you come and join us over there, or at least just check out the page. I'll leave the link in the description box below, and I'll see you again soon, either here or over there. Bye for now.